Have you ever wondered how someone who is literally worshipped by millions, treated like a demigod, can find any real, genuine peace and quiet inside their own head? Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating happiness philosophy of a true cultural icon, Rajinikanth, to see if we can figure that out.
Really think about that question. On one side, you've got this unbelievable level of fame and adoration, and on the other, this deep personal search for simplicity and tranquility. How on earth do you make those two worlds coexist? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack.
And that brings us right to our first section, the superstar's paradox. This is where we really get into the core tension between the larger-than-life myth and the actual man. Okay, just look at this comparison. It's like two different people. On the left, you have Rajinikanth, the icon, one of the highest-paid actors in the country. But on the right, you have Shivaji Rao Gaekwad, the man who started out as a bus conductor and, to this day, isn't afraid to eat a simple meal by the side of the road. This isn't just a quirky habit. It's a very deliberate choice to stay grounded.
So, how does he manage this? How does he live with that paradox? The answer is pretty wild. Radical transparency. He shows up in public with his natural gray hair, totally rejecting that pressure to look ageless like so many other stars. He really believes that trying to hide your true self creates this huge psychological weight. By just letting people see the real him, he finds a kind of balance.
So, if being authentic is his strategy, what's the actual practice behind it all? That brings us to the absolute core of his philosophy, a journey that, believe it or not, started with more than 10 years of dedicated, quiet work.
And here it is. The source of his peace is something called Kriya Yoga. He describes it as a secret and sacred technique and directly credits it for his famous positive vibes. This is not some casual hobby for him. This is the absolute foundation of his entire way of life.
Now check out this timeline, because it shows this was not some quick fix. He starts Kriya Yoga in 2002, but for the next 12 years, he openly admits there was no visible change. Can you imagine that dedication? Sticking with something for over a decade without seeing a major payoff. It's an incredible lesson in delayed gratification. Real peace wasn't instant, it was earned.
And after all that time, he describes reaching a state known as Aparyatna, which basically means effortless flow. It's this incredible state where things just seem to happen. They just fall into place without all the struggle. And notice, he doesn't credit his own genius for this. He attributes it entirely to the spiritual practice that guides him.
So once he built this incredible inner foundation, it gave him a whole new way of looking at the outside world. And that brings us to how he navigates the madness of stardom, the illusion of fame.
He could not be more direct about this. He says that the happiness you get from external things, fame, money, awards, it's all temporary. In his view, that stuff accounts for less than 10% of real, lasting contentment. The vast majority, over 90%, has to come from the peace you build inside yourself.
The big idea that lets him think this way is the concept of Maya. This is the understanding that the material world, with all its crazy ups and downs, is basically a cosmic illusion. By seeing fame and fortune as temporary and, in a way, not entirely real, he builds this kind of psychological shield. It keeps him from getting too carried away by success or too crushed by failure.
So really, it all boils down to two different types of happiness. On one side, you have Suka. Think of this as temporary pleasure, the high you get from a new car or a big promotion. It's what most of us chase. But on the other side, you have Ananda. This is a deep, stable bliss that comes from within. His entire life is aimed at achieving Ananda, not Suka.
All right, so it's one thing to talk about a philosophy, right? But it's something else entirely to actually live it, day in and day out. So let's see how these big ideas actually show up in his everyday life.
And you can see it everywhere. His life off-screen is a masterclass in radical simplicity. Wearing simple clothes, driving his own car without a huge entourage. Every single one of these is a conscious choice, designed to remind himself that he is not the superstar persona 24/7. He is constantly bringing himself and everyone else back to his humble roots. And this might be the most powerful example of all. When one of his films doesn't do well, he has a documented history of personally paying the distributors back for their losses. Out of his own pocket. That is just unheard of in almost any industry. It shows a complete detachment from both ego and money, and it's why he has so much respect. This quote just perfectly sums up his entire priority list. For him, the end goals are not money or fame. They are peace at home and respect in society. Everything else, all the blockbusters, all the awards, it's all secondary to those two core values. So when you put all these different pieces together, what do you really have? Let's try to synthesize everything we've just discussed into a simple, clear model for what it takes to find that kind of inner peace.
You can really break his model down into 4 key pillars. First, there's a spiritual anchor, that daily meditation. Second, there's detachment from the outcome, like when he pays distributors back. Third, there's authenticity and simplicity, which you see in how he dresses and presents himself. And fourth, a clear set of values that puts peace first. It's the powerful link between his inner beliefs and his public actions that makes it all work.
So if we were to lay it out as a path to Shanti, or peace, it would look something like this. 1. You have to invest in a long-term inner discipline. 2. You need the philosophical clarity to see that worldly success isn't the end-all be-all. 3. Your actions have to actually match your beliefs. And finally, 4. You have to put ethical values like peace and respect above everything else. And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. In a world that is so completely obsessed with chasing fame, with getting more followers, more likes, more everything, Rajinikanth's life asks us to consider a radical idea. What if the real power, the most lasting kind of strength, doesn't come from getting more, but from learning how to let go?